to Tennessee's at-home learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all fourth graders out there, though all children are welcome to tune in. This lesson is the 18th in our series. My name is Valencia Smith, and I'm a fourth grade teacher at Venus Stewart Elementary in Gallatin, Tennessee. I'm so excited to be your teacher for this lesson. Welcome to my virtual classroom. If you didn't see our previous lessons, you can find them at www.tn.gov/education. You can still tune in today's lesson if you haven't seen any of the others. But it might be more fun if you first go back and watch our other lessons, since we'll be talking about things we've learned previously. Today, we will continue our close read to the text, The Legend of Keesh, adopted by Jack London's writings by B.P. Skinner. This means B.P. Skinner rewrote this legend in his own words. Before we get started, to participate fully in today's lesson, you will need 2 pieces of paper, a pencil, a surface to write on, and the student packet for ELA Grade 4, Lesson 18, which can be found at www.tn.gov/education. All right, let's begin. Today starts our third of 5 lessons based on one text. By focusing on one text for several lessons, we have time to think deeply about the text and complete several close reads. This means that we are able to read it many times for different purposes. As we've discussed in previous lessons, our text for this set of lessons is a legend. In the last lesson, we started thinking about what makes this text a legend. Let's see. By finishing the story, we can now identify more reasons it's a legend. A legend usually focuses on heroic individuals or fantastic creatures and describes an exciting adventure. It may have some basis in historical fact, something that actually happened, and includes some supernatural events. Let's think about what we have. Have we encountered any of those characteristics in the Legend of Keesh? Heroic characters. Who is the heroic character in our story? After reading in our last lesson, I am sure now that Keesh is the hero. He went on a hunt at age 13, killed 3 bears, and fed his village. Exciting adventure. What do you think? The author description of Keesh's hunting the bear was rather exciting. Historical facts. In the last lesson, we discussed that the polar sea is a real place and any supernatural events. Did we encounter those in our story? Good remembering. Keesh is accused of witchcraft and using evil spirits to kill the bear. Wow, it meets every criteria for a legend. Now, do you remember the setting of the story? The setting of the Legend of Keesh is a village near the Polar Sea, which is in the Arctic Ocean near the North Pole. Again, let's look at our map. Here is the North Pole, the Arctic Ocean, Alaska, and Russia. I think it would be good to look at the illustration of the village again before we begin discussing the text. Revisiting the illustration after we have finished the story will help us connect the text and the illustration. How can we connect what we read in the last lesson to the illustration? That's right. Igloos were mentioned more in our last lesson. And when I look at the illustration, it makes me wonder where Keesh's igloo is located. If you remember, his igloo is now bigger than the rest as a sign of rank and respect in the village. I am guessing this illustration is more towards the beginning of the story because the igloos all look the same size. As we enter the last lesson, I asked you to write a scene at the end of the story showing the new relationship between Keesh and the villagers. I'm going to read you what I wrote. As I read, as always, consider if I added the requirements that I asked you to write. Establish the situation, organize the events, use dialogue, pacing, and description, use transitional words, provide a conclusion, use precise words, and use correct grammar and punctuation. 2 years after the Honorable Keesh became leader of the village at the edge of the polar sea, a pack of wolves began terrorizing the village. Knowing that Keesh was intelligent and could devise a plan to help the village, the council called a meeting to present the problem. Brilliant leader, Keesh, we are confronted with a pressing problem. A pack of wolves is sneaking into our village when the sun does not shine and is stealing our rations. The eldest council member spoke in a respectful tone. The wolf voices on the wind of the darkness have alarmed me each evening too, Keesh responded to the councilman. I have met with my advisors and we have developed a plan. The council members shook their heads in agreement as Keesh presented a plan that would begin that very evening. Your turn to help me do a quick check to see if I included everything. Establish the situation. What was my situation? Yes, wolves are terrorizing the village. Did I organize my events? The council discovers the problem and then calls a meeting. I think that's organized. Use dialogue, pacing, and description. Yes, both Keesh and the councilman speak, so I included dialogue. I have described Keesh as brilliant and honorable. Also, I used the line to describe the darkness when the sun does not shine. Use transitional words. Did you hear some? A couple I wrote were 2 years later and as Keesh presented. Provide a conclusion. Do you think I wrapped it up enough? I think this is where I needed to revise a bit. Perhaps adding more about the plan here would entice the reader. Did I use precise words? What are your thoughts? Some of my favorites were terrorizing and devise. Use correct grammar and punctuation. Yes, I did this. Now, what about yours? Did you include all those too? Good job. During our third read of the legend today, we are going to continue thinking about Keesh, or the protagonist. We looked at all the characters in the first lesson, but today we're just going to focus on Keesh. Oh, did you hear a new word? A protagonist is a new word you can use for the main character. Keesh is the protagonist in our text. As we read today, our focus question is, what character traits does the author convey through Keesh's words and actions? As we talk through the text, I will draw your attention to the words and details that will help you to answer the question. Then there will be time for you to practice thinking about the words to describe Keesh. Finally, I will assign you independent work that you can complete after the video ends. This is the same structure we have followed for all of our lessons together. Today, like always, we will capture notes and details about the text as we go. I'm going to start a new chart to describe Keesh because today we're going to describe Keesh, the protagonist, and I'm afraid that I might not have enough room. So this is what I would like for you to do. Create the chart and write Keesh, the protagonist, at the top of your paper. We will use our chart as we read the text. If you have a copy of the text, you can use it as we read together. If not, you can listen as I read parts. Also, don't forget to take your own notes as we read. Now, today we will not be reading the text in full. Instead, I have selected specific parts that I think will help us infer some character traits about Keesh. Remember, when we infer, we use what the text says and what we know. As I read the first section, remember, you are listening for words and actions that help us understand who Keesh is. The first selection I made was the second paragraph. When Keesh's father was killed while hunting, to save the village from starvation, the villagers soon forgot him. They neglected Keesh and his widowed mother, Ikiga, who shared a small igloo together. This all changed when Keesh turned 13. Because his father's blood ran in his veins, Keesh was bright, healthy, and strong. When the village council met in the big igloo of Chief Kloshkwan, Keesh, despite his youth, spoke up. Now, why do you think the author included the phrase, despite his youth? Do you remember the meaning of the word despite? Yes, it means even though. The author is saying even though he is young, he speaks up. The author is trying to draw attention to how young he is. Now, I'm going to revisit when Keesh is speaking to the council. The elders and onlookers jeered at the young boy. How dare one so young speak out in the council? Despite them, Keesh continued. You speak for your wives and mothers, so I speak for my mother, Ikiga, who should have her fair share of meat. All we get is grisly meat that's full of bones. The anger of the men boiled. Keesh was ordered to leave the council with no dinner and was promised a beating. Keesh's blood pounded in his head and his eyes flashed. Take this, you men, as my last word. My father, Bach, was a great hunter. When he was alive, he made certain that no widow or child ever cried at night because there was no meat. Today, many go hungry while you, the strong men of the village, stuff yourselves with the best meat. What did you notice? Why is the council surprised that Keesh speaks up? Yes, because he is young. He's only 13 years old. From this, what does it tell us about who usually speaks at the council? Because they are thinking, how dare one so young speak out at the council? I don't think young people normally speak at the council. What does this tell you about Keesh? Let's read this sentence again. The elders and onlookers jeered at the young boy. How dare one so young speak out in the council? This line is important. He is able to speak in front of the men of the council, even though they are treating him badly as he speaks. Now, what does this line tell us about how the council is acting while they listen? I hope you remember that jeered means to make loud, rude remarks. They are showing their disapproval by making loud remarks. Now, let's think about what to record about Keesh based upon these parts. Say your thoughts out loud. I think we should write, speaks to council even though he is young and audience jeers. I'm gonna write that first. Speaks to council even though he is young and audience jeers. And those were words to describe that. We wrote words because we learned how Keesh thought his word. Keesh's thoughts through his words. Now, as Keesh is speaking, he speaks of his father. His words can help us understand more about not only his father, but Keesh himself. Listen for what Keesh says about his father as I read. When my father hunted, he brought home more meat than any of the two best hunters combined, Keesh explained. With his own hands, he divided the meat, and his own eyes, he saw to it that the neediest of the village received their fair share. What does this quote tell us about his father? That's right. His father made sure that he hunted meat for the village and divided it with everyone, even the neediest. What does Keish's father want for the village? I think the last two words say it all. Fair share. He wants it to be equal for those in the village. What does Keesh admire about his father? Through Keish's own words, I can see that he admires his father for his hunting ability and for wanting fairness in the village. Now, why does Keesh say these words to the council? Because he wants what his father wanted. He does not want villagers to go hungry. We need to sum this up. What does this tell us about Keesh through words? I think it tells us that Keesh wants what his father wanted. Says the neediest people in the village to be fed. So let's write that. Keesh says the neediest in the village to be fed. And we add this to our chart and we're going to write words beside it because we know that it was through his words. Now, like I said at the beginning, we can learn about a character through their words, which we have added to our chart, but we can also learn from their actions. This next selection is about Keish's actions. The next day, Keesh was seen leaving the village with his father's enormous hunting spear and bow, and an ample supply of bone-barbed arrows. The villagers whispered to one another. It was unprecedented that a young boy should go hunting alone. Do you remember what unprecedented means? Yes, it means it never happened before. Why is Keish's decision to hunt the mother bear unprecedented? What do these actions tell you about Keesh? That's right. No one as young as Keesh has ever gone hunting alone before. This tells us that he was a rather brave kid. I'm going to add the action to our chart. Hunts bear even though he is young. We're writing hunts bear even though he is young. Beside it, I'm going to write action because we're learning about Keesh through his actions. Now, in the next selection, we can infer traits of Keesh through both his words and actions. As I read, think about what we can infer about Keesh. I'm just a boy, Keesh explained. I'm ignorant of these things. I've devised a way to kill the ice bear with ease, that's all. It's headcraft, not witchcraft. Would you tell us how you do this? Can any man do this? Asked Clash Kwan, not convinced. Any man can do this, Keesh. Any man can do this. Keesh finished sucking his marrow bones and rose to tell the group of his clever hunting tactic. It's really quite simple. You take a small chunk of blubber and make it hollow. Into the hole goes a sharp whalebone. Another piece of blubber is fitted over the bone. Then you put it outside when it freezes into a tiny ball. Keesh explained that when the bear eats the balls of the blubber, the fat melts, exposing the sharp ends of the whalebone. The bones tear at the bear's insides and make him terribly uncomfortable. He cannot eat, he cannot drink, he cannot sleep, he said with a smile. After days without being able to eat or drink, the bear makes easy prey. Now, what does this tell us about how Keesh killed the bear? That's right, Keesh devised a plan. It wasn't just luck. I'm going to write that. I think I will label it as action because he did it, even though it was in this part he was telling us about doing it. So we're writing Keesh devised a plan and the word action behind it. Now, to do something with ease means to do it easily. How was killing the bear easy for Keesh? What does this tell us about Keesh? That's right. He thought it was easy because he had a plan. He used his smarts to devise a plan. Now, what did Keesh mean when he said headcraft? Keesh is using his own words to describe himself as smart by saying he used his head. I'm going to write that to our chart as words he used. Headcraft to kill the bear. Let's write that. He uses headcraft to kill the bear. And we're writing words behind that. Now, this last selection I chose today is from the end of the story. I think Keish's actions speak loudly here. The council was satisfied and amazed by Keish's story. And this is how Keesh rose from being an insignificant boy to becoming the head man of the village. And long as he lived, no one cried at night because there was no meat. I want to focus on the last part. As long as he lived, no one cried at night because there was no meat. Who is he in the sentence? Yes, it is Keesh. What does this phrase tell us about Keish's actions? Good. Keesh makes sure everyone has food, so no one is left crying because they don't have food. His actions need to go on our chart. What does he do? Good. He shares meat with the village. Let's add that to our chart. And behind it, we're going to write actions because it's what he did. Shares meat with the village and action. Now, let's think about the connections we can make between the notes we captured today and infer the character traits of Keesh. Can you make any connections between our notes? I noticed two things that I think go together. Keesh hunting the bear, even though he is young and speaking to the council. What can we infer about Keesh based on those two traits? Speaking to the bear when he was young, and keep hunting the bear when he was young and speaking to the council. From these two, Keesh can be described as, that's right, brave. I'm going to connect these two and write the word brave. With the other four, do you see more connections that we can help infer Keish's character traits? I see the action of Keesh devising a plan to kill the bear and the word headcraft as similar. What word would you use to describe Keesh based on these? That's right, I agree. Both of these tell me that Keesh is intelligent. I'm going to draw lines between these and write the word intelligent. Well, that only leaves us two. Is there a connection between the action of sharing the meat and saying the neediest needs fed? What's a good word for that one? Good, I agree. Generous is a great word to connect these. I'm going to draw a line from these two and write generous. So I'm going to go from here. Let's go all the way through to there, and we're going to write generous. Now let's review what we've collected today. We looked at the characters, words, and actions to infer about what the author is telling us about Keesh. From our notes about his words and actions, we have determined that Keesh is brave, intelligent, and generous. You guessed it. We're going to write about Keesh's character traits now. Here's your question. What character traits does the author convey through Keesh's words and actions? Use details to support your answer. Have you already started considering an introduction sentence? If so, you're on top of it. Good job. What were you thinking? Take a moment to jot down your ideas. For this one, I'm going to take the prompt and chart and turn it into a sentence. Here's what I wrote. In the text, The Legend of Keesh, the author uses the character's words and actions to describe Keesh, the protagonist, as brave, intelligent, and generous. Do you see what I did there? I used the title of the chart and the three words we inferred today. Now, I can use the three words as the structure of the paragraph. We will write about Keesh being brave together, and you will finish the other two words by yourself. Now, how might we start our second sentence about bravery? Write down your thoughts. I wrote, it can be inferred that Keesh is brave through his actions and words. Now, I need to use the evidence I collected. How might I turn them into a sentence or two? Here's what I wrote. Keesh hunting the bear, even though he is young, is an action that proves Keesh to be brave. Also, Keesh speaking to the council is another example of bravery. Now it's your turn. You will write about being intelligent and generous on your own. Here's your task for today. I'm about to read aloud your task. Be sure to write your task on paper so you have it after the lesson ends. Using the chart about Keesh, what character trait does the author convey about Keesh's words and actions? Write a paragraph to explain how the words and actions of Keesh can be used to infer his character traits. Use key details from the text to support your answer. Also, don't forget to introduce your topic, group the traits together, use details to support the trait, provide a conclusion, link your thoughts together, use precise language, use correct grammar punctuation. Now, for your creative assignment today, since our whole lesson was on Keesh, draw how you imagine Keesh looks. Boys and girls, once again, I enjoyed digging into the protagonist Keesh in the story of The Legend of Keesh with you today. Thank you for inviting me into your home. Tomorrow, we will dig more into the language of the text. I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson in Tennessee's At Home Learning Series. Bye-bye.